Hello and welcome back. So this one should be pretty interesting. So first of all, welcome all of you back to Christian and Science. Now, considering that we have already sort of broken away from math and we'll be covering Chris's English abilities in a few days' time, there is of course Chris in the scientific world, which, to be fair, Chris isn't exactly going to break any boundaries anytime soon, but no, I think that's about it, so let's get to it. Science is the systematic study of the natural world through observation and experimentation. Science can be divided into pure science, which studies natural phenomena, and applied science, which finds practical uses for said phenomena. Chris has an on/off again history with science, though it is mostly off. His view of science, nature, and technology is utterly warped. He has lost touch with the times and thinks science is much more ahead in certain fields than it actually is, probably due to him getting all his information through fictional media. He has also mixed up real science, pop science, pseudoscience, and other things he has learned from media and enablers to create a very distorted view of nature. Furthermore, Chris struggles with mathematics and numerical reasoning despite boasting otherwise. His ego also causes him to reject scientific findings, such as when he rejected the fact that Asperger's syndrome and high-functioning autism are one and the same. And there is quite a little bit to get into, so how about we just crack on with the experiment, shall we? Fated moments override numbers. Chris on his views on established scientific data. Chris comes from a scientific background on his father's side. Bob was a scientific man. He worked as a GE engineer for a large part of his life. He wanted Chris to be into science too, so he had set up a small workshop where he and young Chris would tinker around. Chris's paternal half-siblings both held STEM doctorates, with one in particular having made a career as an ophthalmologist, and Chris himself has an applied science associate's degree in CAD. Alas, none of this got Chris deeply interested in science. Chris has stated his opinions on science in his OkCupid questionnaire. He said all types of science are interesting to him, though he finds conversations about science to be boring and annoying. He claims to put equal weight in science and faith, and enjoys finding out how things work. All these, however, should be taken with a grain of salt, since he was ready to do anything, including lying, to obtain China. Oh, here we go. There we are. Anything just to get some China. That is legitimately the only thing Chris seems bothered about, isn't it? His actual views on pure science are probably low or non-existent since he slept through high school. He may have a positive opinion on computer science due to him being hooked on computers since a very young age. Unsurprisingly, Chris is not interested in engineering. All his engineering marvels are shitty duct tape and Lego creations that a child could also make. Well, based on that, let's just count our lucky stars that Chris decided not to create a very crude interpretation of the human centipede, otherwise known as the Human Centipede Part 2, but let's try not to relive those nightmares. Pure science. Physics. There are multiple things that are horribly wrong in the Sonichu comics, including a lack of regard for the laws of physics. Documenting all of these would be impossible since each page of the comic has some law being broken. All kinds of wacky things happen in the comics, such as light behaving to the wishes of the great director Chandler. Velocity and acceleration are as random as the lottery. Friction becomes fiction, and hypothetical concepts such as parallel dimensions and portals are everyday occurrences. Normally, these discrepancies from reality could be written off as science fiction, but Chris thinks all of this really happened in some other dimension, and it can be considered as a critique of his scientific knowledge. In real life, since Chris has no real powers, he has to play by the rules of physics, but he maintains an unbending belief in unproven concepts. Most of these beliefs can be traced back to fictional media he likes, such as Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Futurama for the multiple dimensions, and Rick and Morty to prove that there are other people who can traverse dimensions. Chris, again, attempted to bend the laws of physics in February of 2021, having plans to use piezoelectricity on his quartz crystals in order to open up a portal to complete the dimensional merge. Chris has discussed this with Kyle, to which he explains to Chris why this wouldn't work, and how the article that he is citing does not provide evidence of his claims. Chris is... and yes, that does mean Chris is willing to believe in concepts that have... Well, he is willing to believe in concepts, not anything that's actually based on evidence or probability for success. Chris is almost the antithesis, really, to science, when you think about it. Chemistry. Chris had 2 gal pals as partners in his chemistry lab. Not much else is known on his views of chemistry, though he probably has low opinions about it due to the rote nature of chemistry and him being a lazy bum. Biology. Chris's history with biology is well documented due to him torturing his body by ramming all sorts of things into holes where they don't belong, while also torturing biologists by making ungodly anatomical drawings of electric hedgehog Pokemon and shitty morphological drawings of humans. Astronomy. Chris has gone on record saying that he wants to send every ounce of tobacco to Earth on the moon. He once said that he'd considered sending it to the sun, but decided against it because he thought it would somehow pollute the entire solar system and shorten the lifespans of all humanity. You might be going off a little bit. I think it would take at least a good few years for the smoke to actually reach the Earth, although not without trying. But then again, since it wouldn't work. Moving on. Applied science. Computer science. Out of all the sciences, Chris is probably the best at computer science. Like most people born during or after the 1980s, he has been around computers since his early childhood. He took some computer upgrade classes in PVCC, and he bragged to Casey's dad that he's technologically inclined. He coded most of his websites by hand using text editors, as opposed to using purpose-built HTML editors that do the heavy work for him. He knows a bit about older computers like the Commodore 64 due to his age and nostalgia. Engineering. Bob tried to get Chris interested in engineering since Chris was young, to sadly no avail. Though Chris has made a few inventions, such as a case for holding 2 Apple products and a case for holding Pokemon cards. The raw materials Chris uses are limited to Crayola model magic, Legos, and duct tape. Due to his new interest in cosplaying, he has started making some accessories to go along with the costume. When he cosplayed as Chris from Pokemon Crystal for BronyCon 2019, he tried to make a Pokegear. Instead of using proper professional materials, he opted to use Crayola model magic. Medicine. Medicine is a field of applied human biology which helps in keeping a person's health in check. Chris has incredibly poor mental, physical, and social health. I feel like that could have been taken out of context. It probably has nothing to do with the article, but they're not wrong either. Another problem he creates is by self-medicating and relying on unlicensed people, mostly himself. He did go to a doctor on occasion for his physical health checkups, but refused to go to a proper mental health counselor and went to his church's pastoral counselor instead. Recently, he has put in an effort to improve in all fields, but nowhere near what is required to make him a fully functional human being. And this is them being polite about it, for goodness sake. Psychology we have sort of covered previously, but if you want a rundown, is that Chris is incredibly dismissive about people who are professional enough to tackle Chris's problems head on, and Chris would rather go and speak to somebody who would rather just tell Chris that everybody else is wrong and he is the only one in the right. That is literally mental health care as far as Chris is concerned. Pseudoscience. Astrology. Chris has almost never spoken about astronomy, though he has talked about astronomers' old sibling, astrology. Chris has for a long time told others about his and his creations, zodiac signs proving he has some belief in it. He has mentioned in an IRC chat that he reads his horoscope daily, and in his February 2012 Facebook posts, posted in detail about his interpretation of his horoscope. In his OkCupid questionnaire, he considered astrology to be a legitimate science. Legitimate in what way, Chris? Because you know what? Through the medium of interpretation, it is actually possible. I mean, look, I'll do it for you guys right now. Like, this is my own little box of tarot cards, by the way. And just for reference, I will literally do everybody a favor. And here is the very first card I'll pull up from the very top and just put it 8 of Swords, and it's upside down. So, concerning the almanac, it's not even an almanac either. We can actually deduce via this very handy little chart about what the whole point of the swords is. Okay, 8 of Swords. Contradiction, criticism, reprimand, crises. Temporary difficulties, blame, censure, scandal, trauma healing, swap by details. Pinned, entrapped, dark night of the soul, mental void and paralysis from fear, flexibility of beliefs and ideas. So but because it's like upside down, surely that would entail that it's more criticism towards other people. It's pointing the finger outward rather than inward. At least that's my interpretation of it. But then again, I don't claim to know for sure about, like, well, if this is actually based on fact. But though I do know a lot of people who are interested in astronomy, and well, it could be one of several things as far as I'm concerned. You know, once when I was on the old rock and roll, I once pulled up a tarot card in my in this box here, literally by chance, and it showed the Emperor upside down, and I actually went to ask somebody about what this technically meant, and they interpreted it as though something has been broken. But because the Emperor is upside down, it means that, well, am I not merely in the process of actually trying to destroy something? But if I am, then, well, what am I destroying it for? Because ideally, an emperor is meant to be the head, the very top, somebody who is absolutely in a position of all power, benevolent, intelligent, and somebody who is almost without compromise. Somebody who rules, somebody who wants to create, somebody who is, well, leading a civilization. He will one day plant trees in his garden to which he knows the shades he will never sit in ever again. The idea, it's literally because it's meant to be for future generations, that sort of thing. The idea they try to come across about the reason why it's upside down is that actually what I'm going through is nothing of the sort. That instead, I've actually come to destroy, or rather uproot, the status quo of the world around me. Or at least the world I've conjured up. Is there anything legitimate about that, or is that just based on coincidence? I suppose that's more down to interpretation, but legitimate science? Nah, I'm not too really. Magic. Chris is shown to have a belief in magic many times. The most notable example is the belief that he had the power to curse people. Oh, don't we know that? Magic stones. A subset of his beliefs in magic, Chris has started purchasing and wearing various semi-precious stones which supposedly mentally calm and heal him. He also purchased an $80 water bottle with some rocks in it which also help him accomplish the same. Fat use. Precognition. We might literally just do this article separately just for the lols, I guess. But speaking of things that didn't do any good, subliminal frequency self-help audios. Subliminal frequency hypnosis videos are sets of audio on YouTube consisting of binaural beats, claiming to help listeners do things such as reduce body odor, turn a penis into a vagina, and make your ass fatter and stomach thinner without having to do any actual work at all. All of which are claims without any sort of real evidence to their effectiveness, which meant that Chris started watching these videos in 2016 in an attempt to speed up his gender transition. This culminated in Chris slicing his teat open because he believed that watching these videos caused a vagina to grow inside of him. Despite risking his health from doing so, he continued to follow them, this time in an attempt to develop psychic powers. Of all the videos he's watched, only the ass fattening one has truly worked, and not through its own means. Mad, eh? Numerology. Chris has seemed to develop a fixation towards numerology, which became especially prevalent in several jail letters. Chris has on several occasions written the penultimate digit in the year 2022 backwards so that the 2s resemble a heart. Oh, that's actually kind of cute. Doesn't make up for anything Chris has done, but what can you do? Mathematics. I excelled in math, for the love of God. Mathematics, math or maths for short, is the study of quantity, numbers, and space. As with many autistics, Chris displays a fascination with numbers, but despite his claimed honor roll status, he has a weak grasp on the subject. There are countless examples of his mathematical errors, including basic arithmetical errors, as well as quantity, measurement, weight, and time. Chris has stated on at least one occasion that his math education goes all the way up to college trigonometry, which shows that at some point he's also learned at least some college-level algebra and geometry, as they are both prerequisites to a typical trigonometry course. He has bragged to Julie about how he's a pretty good maths genius. He claims he received A's in his math classes. However, he hasn't used his supposed talent to any sort of advantage whatsoever by getting a job in a technical field. On his Wikipedia page, he cited his mathematical talent as proof he should have received an award at graduation. In Mumble 2, he said he got into a car crash while doing math in his head. So you can't tell me he's that good at it then. That's almost the exact opposite. And coincidentally, Chris never did math again after that. Arithmetic. Quickville's currency is made up of C quarters and W quarters. According to the Solitude canon, 10 C quarters made up a single W quarter, which makes no sense, as a quarter is meant to be 1/4 of its respective unit. I mean, surely the way to do this is that the purchasing value for one W cent is 10 C cents. Like, surely that should have made things a lot easier. But then again, admitting the idea of a C cent means that it's technically cents with an extra C in it, makes it sound a little bit redundant in the grand scheme of things. But then again, what can you expect from somebody who names an entire city following his initials? When a clerk told Chris he was $2 short of affording his junk food, he was left dumbfounded as to what to do. Another customer in line gave Chris $2 to make up the deficit, and instead of handing it to the clerk to pay off his debt, Chris simply took that money, the food, and left the store over everyone's protests. I don't understand why Chris was never chased up about this, because this is absolutely your classic case of shoplifting. According to Chris, if he lived in Equestria, he'd be 1,050 years old, because 1 year in Equestria is equal to 30 Earth years. While Nightstar is 19 years old in human years, but 570 in pony years. That is some hentai logic right there, and trust me, I know that fine well that there are some animes out there that literally do push the boundaries for age, but that's why that is necessary, I don't know. Because Chris has this fixation for his birth date, he decided to give her the birth date the 24th of February 1982, which is apparently pony year 967. Only checking after he's made his statement, Chris did the math to confirm this. In a later Facebook post, Chris stated that 30 out of the 365.25 Earth days is equal to 11 Earth days for each birthday. In reality, 30 divided by 365.25 is approximately 8 hundredths. Even more pathetic is how he wrote the quotient as divided 30 by 365 instead of the other way round, and still got it wrong, as 365.25 divided by 30 is equal to 12.175, which cannot be rounded down to 11. In his flawed math, though, he had found clear that the actual birth date in pony years should be 19th of February 939. Who cares? It's a why am I caring? In Sonitude 10, the 4-cent garbage.com tower collapses with 1,500 people in it. According to Chris, 500 were perfectly unharmed, 250 were too drunk to escape on their own, 125 of these drunk trolls managed to get out alive with the help of the sober trolls, while 125 of the drunk trolls were hurt, injured and or killed. 125 sober trolls were hurt, injured or killed, 250 others were injured, 150 others were safe but hurt, and 100 were killed. Not only are we left in the dark about what happened to the other 125 drunk troll casualties, but this total also only accounts to 1,375 people. Chris, now as I've mentioned before, do you think Chris is really that intelligent enough to do something as basic as, I don't know, double check just to make sure? Who conducted this study? Estimation/measurement. When exercising by lifting 2 boxes of 12-pack lemonade, he estimated that the 4.26 litres of lemonade he was lifting weighed about 50 pounds, when in fact it weighed less than 10. In the chair lifting video, Chris claimed that the chair he was lifting weighed a grand number of pounds. Chris repeatedly claims to have D-cup breasts. In his breast massage video, Chris measures his chest and underbust as 44 and 40 inches respectively, and says they make him a D-cup. In reality, he is a B-cup. Also, the conventional method for breast measurement does not work for trans women, mainly because of his chest girth, so Chris is actually closer to an A-cup. Wah, wah, wah. In the infamous father call, Chris seemed to believe a doghouse made of plastic and wood weighed 5 to 10 tons, or 10,000 to 20,000 pounds, and was heavier than any tombstone, which tend to weigh an average, although, to be fair, I think that was more of a metaphor, so we can bypass Chris on this. Anyway, Chris believes that plastic and wood, okay. After walking 8 miles to and from the post office, Chris vastly underestimated the entire journey to have only been 2 miles. Also, Chris has tried to describe a number of everyday things like love and respect, using all kinds of scales and numbers. His most famous example, the heart level, measures his emotional state. Another example, the scale of respect, is meant to be used to measure Chris's respect for certain individuals. In one of Chris's early maps of Quickville, the dimensions of its sectors/divisions are clearly out of scale. Even with Chris's reassurance that his CAD skills are at play, it's pretty easy for even a child to point out the errors in his judgment. There's like no real... Basically, their house is located midpoint between the mall and the metropolis. And, well... this is just straight up rubbish. This layout is absolutely... If this layout was a person, I would shoot it in the face. And then I would say, what did you do that for? In Sonichu issue 1, Black Sonichu is supposed to spin dash at 200 rotations per minute, which is supposed to mean that he does it at high speeds. This actually roughly translates to 3 per second. Chris claims that his calls from... I think Chris was trying to go for maybe 200,000 revolutions per minute, but We'll never know. Chris claims that his calls from Central Virginia Regional Jail are limited to 10 minutes. Recordings of full calls, however, show that the actual limit is 15 minutes. Well, then again, what exactly does Chris have to say for even 10 minutes? I'm surprised it's even that long. Algebra. Planet Dolan artist Vim Homeless made a post joking about how butts are greater than water, written as butts more than water, to which Chris misunderstood this, taking the greater than symbol to mean the less than symbol. Water is more important than butts. Considering the post was made by a porn artist, and one which Chris follows no less, it is more than shocking to see that he couldn't have made this connection. 2 days after the post was made, Chris made another response to 2D animator Spinal Palm, in which he says that salted butter is better than unsalted butter, written as salted butter is more than unsalted butter. This time around, Chris actually understood the underlying message and agreed with Spinal Palm about the topic. Hooray! Meaning that he must finally figure out what the meaning of the greater than symbol is after several other users corrected him. I'm so glad that they had to put that in. Geometry. In one of his first tirades towards the Xbox, Chris said that the angle of half a circle is 120 degrees. Then revised his claim to 130. So he still gets it wrong anyway. A half circle is 180. Chris got it wrong twice. Like, dude, one of the Xbox's consoles is literally called the 360. How did you not know that? Well, then again, Chris hates the Xbox, I suppose, but okay, we're wrapping this up. Number systems. Chris reports on how much Cherokee blood he has been inconsistent. When he emailed Jackie, he stated he was 1/16th Cherokee, but he later told Regina that he was 1/32 Cherokee. Finally, when talking to Emily, he claimed Bob was at least 1/4 Cherokee, which made of Chris at least 1/8 Cherokee, not 1/16th or 1/32. To avoid assigning an unlucky number to his Nightstar comic, Chris decided to number the comic as Sonitude 12-9, using an M- in place of a decimal point. This could make sense if it referred to the 9th part of the issue, but Chris clearly intends it as a fractional amount of almost 13, which from Chris's warped point of view, that is a logistical nightmare, among many others. Statistics and probability. Chris coined the term infinitely high boyfriend factor, the probability that a woman he is trying to latch onto isn't single, in which he claims that he doesn't hate only 1/4 billionth of all males. Well, I think Chris will again have more time to think about that and think about what he's done, I suppose. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, well, that, as they say, is that. That is the whole of Chris and science. And, well, outside of the fact that Chris just kind of looks... I know it doesn't take too much for Chris to look like an idiot, but... And I get it, there are some things out there that are, even in the world of science, are particularly hard to get your head around, and they're more sort of like glorified proofs of concept as opposed to things the average Joe can understand, like quantum mechanics or how half-lives work or how they affect the human body. But Chris somehow manages to fail at even the most basic tasks, such as what is half a circle in degrees. But with all that being said and done, well, there you go. Thank you all of you guys for watching once again, and I'll hope to see all of you guys again in the next video. So take care, and bye-bye for now. Well, hello again. And just before each and every one of you leave, if I could just hold your attention for a few more seconds, and I want to show you very quickly my Patreon store. I've been running this for 5 years now, and ever since this month began, I have decided to reopen, relaunch, completely sort out my categories for videos, and I've uploaded them sometimes as far as 3 months in advance. So you guys will be able to get an exclusive look exactly what's coming out, when it's coming out, at your convenience. So make sure to stop by, take a look around, and let's see what you think. Thank you very much for supporting me once again, and I'll see you again next time.